The stars had never looked so cold to Jack Morrison as they did from Volanthos Prime. He stood at the window of his small apartment, watching the alien ships move across the purple sky like metal insects. Behind him, his daughter Lily was drawing pictures at the kitchen table, humming a song her mother used to sing. It had been 2 years since cancer took his wife. 2 years of raising Lily alone. When the diplomatic posting came through, Jack had faced an impossible choice: leave his daughter behind on Earth for months at a time, or bring her to a world where humans were barely tolerated. He chose to keep her close. He would always choose to keep her close. Humanity had joined the Galactic Council 60 years ago. They called it an honor at the time. The truth was far less kind. Humans were the youngest species in the Alliance. They were also considered the weakest, the most primitive, the least important. Other races had been traveling between stars for thousands of years before humans learned to make fire. The Council never let them forget it. Jack worked as a junior diplomat, handling trade agreements and minor disputes. It was boring work, but it paid well and kept him near his daughter. Ambassador Kira Lawson, the senior human representative, had warned him about bringing a child to Volanthos Prime. The aliens here did not understand human attachments. They saw children as incomplete beings, not worthy of attention or protection. But Jack had no other choice. "Daddy, look," Lily said, holding up her drawing. It showed a family of 3 stick figures standing under a yellow sun. Jack felt his heart crack a little. She still drew her mother in every picture. "That's beautiful, sweetheart," he said, kneeling beside her. "Why don't you put it on the wall with the others?" Lily nodded happily and ran to tape her artwork next to a dozen similar drawings. She was 7 years old, curious about everything, afraid of nothing. She asked questions about the aliens they passed in the street. She wanted to know why their skin was different colors, why some had 4 arms, why they never smiled at her. Jack did his best to explain without breaking her innocent view of the universe. The next day was the Grand Reception, an annual event where all Council species gathered to celebrate their alliance. Jack was required to attend. He arranged for Lily to stay with a human caretaker, but at the last moment, the caretaker fell ill. Jack faced another impossible choice: miss the reception and damage his career, or bring Lily with him and hope she behaved. He chose to bring her. It was the worst decision of his life. The reception hall was enormous, filled with hundreds of alien dignitaries from dozens of worlds. Lily held her father's hand tightly, her eyes wide with wonder. She had never seen so many different creatures in one place. Jack kept her close, introducing her politely when required, keeping her away from the more hostile species. High Arbiter Zethrak was the leader of the Vorthan, the most powerful species in the Council. He was tall and thin, with gray skin and eyes like black glass. When he looked at humans, he did not hide his disgust. To him, they were animals who had somehow learned to speak. Jack kept Lily far away from him. The reception dragged on for hours. Lily grew bored and restless. Jack was pulled into a conversation with a trade minister, and for just a moment, he let go of her hand. When he looked back, she was gone. Panic seized his heart. He searched the crowded hall, pushing past aliens who snarled at his rudeness. Ambassador Lawson helped him look, her face tight with worry. They found nothing. Lily had wandered through a door that should have been locked. On the other side was a garden unlike anything on Earth. Strange flowers glowed in colors she had never seen. Beautiful trees reached toward a crystal ceiling. She walked through the garden in wonder, touching the soft petals, smelling the sweet air. In the center of the garden was a flower more beautiful than all the others. It was pure white, with edges of gold, and it seemed to shine with its own light. Lily thought it was the most wonderful thing she had ever seen. She reached out and picked it, wanting to show her father. Alarms screamed through the building. Guards appeared from nowhere, surrounding the little girl with weapons drawn. Lily began to cry, clutching the flower to her chest, not understanding what she had done wrong. Jack heard the alarms and ran toward the sound. When he reached the garden and saw his daughter surrounded by armed guards, his blood turned to ice. He pushed through them, dropping to his knees beside her, wrapping his arms around her shaking body. "She didn't know," he said desperately. "She's just a child." She didn't know. High Arbiter Zethrak arrived with cold fury in his eyes. The flower Lily had picked was called the Breath of Vorthan. It was the most sacred relic of his people, a symbol of their divine right to rule. Only the High Arbiter himself was allowed to touch it. To pick it was the greatest crime imaginable. The punishment for desecration is death, Zethrak said. Jack begged. He pleaded. He offered his own life in exchange. Ambassador Lawson demanded a trial, citing human rights under the Alliance Charter. The other species watched in silence. None of them spoke in defense of the human child. The council voted that night. Every species supported the sentence. Humans had no friends among the stars. They had no power, no influence, nothing to bargain with. The law was clear, and the law would be followed. They executed Lily Morrison the next morning in the public square. She was 7 years old. She was crying for her father. Jack was held back by guards, forced to watch as his daughter died for picking a flower. He screamed until his voice broke. He fought until his body gave out. And when they finally let him go, he crawled to where his daughter's body lay and held her in his arms. The aliens watched in silence. Some looked satisfied. Others looked indifferent. None looked ashamed. Jack sat there for hours, holding his dead child, feeling something break inside him that would never heal. But in that darkness, something else stirred. A cold rage began to build, spreading from his shattered heart to his clenched fists to his hollow eyes. And far away on Earth, beneath miles of ancient ice, something felt his rage. Something old, something powerful, something that had been sleeping for 50,000 years. It opened its eyes. The news reached Earth within hours. Every screen, every device, every public display showed the same footage. A little girl crying for her father. A cold alien pronouncing sentence. An execution carried out without mercy or doubt. For a moment, humanity was silent. 8 billion people watched in horror, unable to believe what they were seeing. Then the silence broke, and the sound that replaced it was unlike anything Earth had ever heard. It was the sound of a species united in grief and fury. Protests erupted in every city, on every continent. People who had never agreed on anything stood together in the streets, demanding justice. Governments that had argued for decades spoke with one voice. For the first time in human history, there were no divisions. There was only rage. In Geneva, the United Earth Council convened in emergency session. The Great Hall was packed with leaders from every nation. Their faces hard and cold. President Daniel Webb stood at the center, his hands gripping the podium until his knuckles turned white. They murdered a child, he said. A 7-year-old girl. They murdered her and broadcast it to the galaxy like entertainment. They want us to be afraid. They want us to know our place. The room was silent. Everyone was thinking the same thing. Humanity had no real military. Their official fleet was 32 patrol vessels, barely enough to protect their own solar system. Against the combined might of the Galactic Council, they were helpless. General Marcus Grant stood up. He was an old soldier with gray hair and scars on his face from wars fought decades ago. When he spoke, his voice was calm and steady. There is something the Council does not know about us, he said. Something we have kept hidden for 200 years. He pressed a button, and the screens around the room changed. They showed images of Antarctica, of ice and snow and frozen emptiness. Then they showed something else. Something buried beneath the ice. Something enormous. In 2089, a team of scientists discovered an anomaly beneath the Antarctic ice sheet. They found a fleet of ships, 12 vessels, the smallest of which was 3 kilometers long. The largest is over 15 kilometers. They are not human. They are older than human civilization itself. The room exploded with questions. Grant raised his hand for silence. We call them the predecessors. We do not know who they were or where they came from. All we know is that they left these ships behind, buried in our ice, waiting. We have spent 2 centuries studying them, learning their secrets, preparing them for activation. Director Susan Blake stepped forward. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and steady hands. She had devoted her entire life to Project Lazarus, the most classified program in human history. The ships use technology we still do not fully understand, she explained. Their weapons, their shields, their engines. Everything is beyond our current science. But we have learned enough to operate them. We have trained crews in secret. We have been ready for 20 years. President Webb stared at the images on the screen. Why were we never told about this? Because knowledge is power, Grant replied. And power invites enemies. We knew that one day, humanity might face a threat we could not defeat with conventional forces. We kept the fleet hidden, waiting for the moment we truly needed it. That moment had come. Admiral Nathan Cole was summoned to the Antarctic facility. He had served in the Earth Navy for 30 years, commanding patrol vessels on boring routes through empty space. He never expected to see what waited for him beneath the ice. The underground hangar was so large it had its own weather. Clouds formed near the ceiling, and the air was cold enough to freeze breath. And rising from the floor like monuments to a forgotten god were the ships. They were black as the void between stars. Their hulls were covered with symbols that seemed to move when you looked at them directly. They had no windows, no visible weapons, nothing that looked like conventional technology. They looked alive. Director Blake led Admiral Cole to the largest ship. It had no official name in the ancient language of its builders. The humans called it the Reckoning. She has been sleeping for 50,000 years, Blake said softly. But something woke her up 2 days ago. Something stirred in the collective consciousness of humanity, and she responded. Cole placed his hand on the hull. It was warm, like touching skin. He felt a vibration beneath his palm, almost like a heartbeat. What does she want? He asked. The same thing we want, Blake replied. Justice. The crews were assembled within days. Thousands of soldiers and pilots, who had trained in secret for years, finally received their orders. They boarded the ancient vessels with determination in their eyes. They were not going to war for territory or resources or power. They were going to war for a little girl who died alone and afraid. Jack Morrison had escaped from Valanthos Prime with help from a sympathetic alien trader. He made his way back to Earth, broken and hollow, wanting only to see his daughter's homeworld one last time. Instead, he found himself standing in the Antarctic hangar, watching the ancient fleet prepare for launch. Admiral Cole approached him. I am sorry for your loss, he said quietly. More sorry than words can express. Jack looked at the massive ships rising around him. What are you going to do? We are going to teach them a lesson, Cole replied. We are going to make them understand that human lives have value, that our children are not worthless, that we are not weak. Will it bring her back? Cole was silent for a long moment. No. Nothing will bring her back. But maybe it will save the next child. Maybe it will make them think twice before they hurt another innocent. Jack nodded slowly. The rage inside him had not faded. It had grown colder, harder, sharper. He wanted the galaxy to burn for what it had done. But he also wanted his daughter's death to mean something. He wanted it to change the universe. Make them remember her name, he said. Cole met his eyes. I promise. The 12 ships rose from the Antarctic ice on a cold morning in March. They climbed through the atmosphere in perfect formation, their black hulls gleaming in the sunlight. People across the southern hemisphere looked up and saw them pass overhead. And for the first time in days, they felt something besides grief. They felt hope. The ancient fleet gathered in orbit around Earth. Their engines hummed with power that made nearby satellites malfunction. Their presence alone changed the magnetic field of the planet. Admiral Cole stood on the bridge of the Reckoning, looking out at the stars that had witnessed humanity's greatest shame. Soon, they would witness something else entirely. Set course for the Valanthos threshold, he ordered. It's time to remind the galaxy why they should have been kind. The fleet jumped into hyperspace, and the stars themselves seemed to tremble. The first reports came from a trading outpost at the edge of human space. A patrol vessel had detected 12 unknown objects moving at impossible speeds toward Council territory. The officer who filed the report assumed his sensors were broken. Nothing could move that fast. Within hours, similar reports flooded in from across the frontier. Ships that appeared from nowhere and vanished just as quickly. Energy signatures that broke every known law of physics. A fleet of shadows racing toward the heart of the galaxy. High Arbiter Zethrak received the reports in his private chambers on Valanthos Prime. He read them twice before dismissing his advisors with a wave of his hand. Humanity had no fleet capable of threatening the Council. Their entire navy could be destroyed by a single Vorthan battlecruiser. This was obviously a mistake or a bluff, but something in the reports troubled him. The energy readings were unlike anything in the Council's vast databases. They matched no known technology from any species, past or present. They were old, impossibly old. He pushed the thought aside. Humans were primitive creatures who had barely learned to leave their own planet. Whatever these ships were, they posed no real threat to the combined might of the Galactic Council. Fleet Master Voryx was less confident. He was a veteran of 100 battles, a warrior who had crushed rebellions and conquered worlds. He had learned long ago to respect any enemy, no matter how weak they appeared. He ordered the Council's combined armada to assemble at the Valanthos threshold, the border between human space and Council territory. 3,000 warships answered the call. They came from 12 different species, each one eager to prove their superiority. The Vorthan sent their finest battlecruisers. The Craxian contributed their heavy destroyers. The Malthari deployed their feared carrier groups. Together, they formed the largest military force in galactic history. Voryx looked at his fleet with pride. No enemy had ever survived against such overwhelming power. The humans would be crushed in minutes. Their homeworld would burn as a warning to any other species foolish enough to challenge Council authority. But deep in his warrior's heart, something whispered a warning. Something told him this battle would be different. Commander Derek Hayes stood on the bridge of the Nightfall, the second largest vessel in the human fleet. He was a young officer, only 35 years old, but he had spent 15 years training for this moment. He knew the ancient ship better than he knew his own body. He felt her engines humming through the deck plates. He sensed her weapons charging in the darkness between stars. "What are you thinking?" asked Lieutenant Amy Chen, his tactical officer. "I'm thinking about my sister," Hayes replied quietly. "She has a daughter, 5 years old. Loves to dance." Chen nodded slowly. Everyone in the fleet had someone they wanted to protect. Someone who could have been Lily Morrison. Someone who might be the next victim of Council arrogance. "We're going to win," she said. It was not a question. "We're going to do more than win," Hayes replied. "We're going to make them afraid." The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the threshold. 12 ships faced 3,000. The math was simple. The Council outnumbered them 250 to 1. By every reasonable calculation, humanity had already lost. Admiral Cole opened a communication channel to the entire fleet. His face appeared on screens across all 12 vessels. "I'm not going to give you a speech about duty or honor or sacrifice," he said. "You all know why we're here. You all saw what they did. You all felt what we felt when that little girl died alone and afraid on an alien world." He paused, his jaw tight with controlled rage. "The Council thinks we're weak. They think we're primitive. They think they can kill our children and face no consequences. Today, we teach them how wrong they are. Today, we show them what humanity is capable of. Today, we make them remember the name Lily Morrison." The channel closed. In the silence that followed, 12 ancient ships powered up weapons that had not been fired in 50,000 years. On the other side of the threshold, Fleet Master Voryx watched the human fleet with growing unease. His sensors were going haywire. The energy readings from those 12 vessels exceeded the combined output of his entire armada. That was impossible. That had to be impossible. "Open a channel," he ordered. "I want to speak with their commander." Admiral Cole's face appeared on his screen. The human looked calm, almost peaceful. That was not the face of a man leading 12 ships against 3,000. "You are outmatched," Voryx said. "Surrender now, and we may show mercy. Continue this madness, and you will be destroyed." Cole smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "You killed a child," he said softly. "A 7-year-old girl whose only crime was picking a flower. And you broadcast her death across the galaxy like it was entertainment. She broke our sacred law. The punishment was just. No. The punishment was cruel, and cowardly, and arrogant." Cole leaned forward. "Do you know what the difference is between your species and mine? You have rules about who deserves to live. We don't. Every human life has value. Every child matters. We would burn the galaxy to protect our own." Vorax felt a chill run down his spine. There was something in the human's eyes that he had never seen before. A certainty, a resolve, a complete absence of fear. "You cannot win this fight," he said, but his voice had lost its confidence. "Maybe not," Cole replied. "But you should ask yourself a question before you give the order to fire. Those ships behind me are older than your civilization, older than the Council itself. They have been sleeping beneath our ice for 50,000 years, waiting for a reason to wake up." He leaned back in his chair. "You gave them a reason. You killed a little girl, and you woke up something ancient and angry. So go ahead, Fleet Master. Fire the first shot. See what happens." The channel closed. Vorax stared at the screen for a long moment. His instincts screamed at him to retreat, to wait, to gather more intelligence. But 3,000 ships were watching. 12 species were waiting for him to crush these arrogant humans. He could not back down now. Not against 12 ships, not against primitives who had barely learned to travel between stars. "All ships," he commanded. "Open fire." 3,000 vessels unleashed their weapons at once. The space between the fleets, filled with plasma, missiles, and beams of concentrated energy. It was the most devastating barrage in galactic history, enough firepower to crack a planet in half. Admiral Cole watched the wall of death racing toward his fleet. He did not flinch. He did not blink. "Activate shields," he said calmly. The ancient ships responded. And what happened next would be remembered for 10,000 years. The barrage struck the human fleet like a tidal wave of fire. Enough energy to destroy 100 planets slammed into the shields of the 12 ancient vessels. The council officers watched with satisfaction, expecting to see the human ships torn apart in seconds. The ships did not move. They did not waver. They did not break. The shields absorbed every blast. They drank in the plasma and the missiles and the energy beams like water into sand. And as the barrage continued, something impossible happened. The shields grew stronger. They adapted. They learned. Lieutenant Amy Chen stared at her tactical display in disbelief. "The shields are using their weapons against them. The more they fire, the stronger we get." Admiral Cole nodded slowly. He had known the ancient ships were powerful. He had not known they were this powerful. "Hold formation," he ordered. "Let them waste their ammunition." The Council Armada fired for 3 full minutes. They emptied their magazines. They drained their power cores. They threw everything they had at the 12 enemy ships. When the barrage finally stopped, the human fleet was completely undamaged. Fleetmaster Vorax felt his blood run cold. In 30 years of warfare, he had never seen anything like this. No shield technology in the known galaxy could survive such an attack. No species possessed such power. "What are these things?" whispered his second-in-command. Vorax had no answer, but he had a terrible feeling that he was about to find out. Admiral Cole gave his first offensive order. "All ships, return fire. Target their command vessels first." The ancient weapons activated. They did not fire beams or projectiles or anything the galaxy had ever seen. They fired concentrated bursts of gravitational force that warped space itself. They launched objects that existed in multiple dimensions at once. They released energy fields that simply erased matter from existence. The first shot from the Reckoning struck a Vorthan battlecruiser. The ship did not explode. It did not burn. It crumpled like paper being crushed in a fist. The gravitational forces compressed 10 kilometers of metal and flesh into a sphere the size of a house. 3,000 crew members died in an instant. The second shot destroyed 2 Craxian destroyers. They vanished from existence completely, leaving nothing behind but empty space. The third shot punched through a carrier's shields like they were not there, and detonated its reactor from the inside. The resulting explosion took out 4 more ships nearby. Commander Hayes led the Nightfall and 3 other vessels into the heart of the enemy formation. They moved like predators through a herd of prey, cutting through battleships and cruisers with contemptuous ease. Every shot was a kill. Every maneuver left destruction in its wake. Lieutenant Chen called out targets with mechanical precision. Malthari carrier at bearing 275, destroyer group at bearing 180, command ship at bearing 342. Hayes nodded and gave his orders. The Nightfall danced through the enemy fleet, her ancient weapons singing death in frequencies no living species could hear. She was beautiful and terrible, a machine built for war by beings who had mastered the universe 50,000 years before these aliens had learned to use tools. The Council fleet tried to fight back. Their weapons splashed uselessly against the human shields. Their missiles were intercepted by point defense systems that operated faster than thought. Their ships were outmaneuvered by vessels that seemed to predict their every move. After 15 minutes, the Council had lost 500 ships. They had not damaged a single human vessel. Fleetmaster Vorix ordered a retreat. All ships, fall back to the secondary defense line. Emergency jump to hyperspace. But the engines did not respond. The faster-than-light drives that had carried these ships across the galaxy were offline. Every ship in the fleet was trapped in normal space. "What's happening?" Vorix demanded. His sensors officer looked up with terror in his eyes. "The human ships are projecting some kind of field. It's blocking our jump drives. We can't escape." Vorix understood then what the humans had done. They had not come to fight a battle. They had come to execute a fleet. There would be no retreat. There would be no surrender. There would only be destruction. The slaughter continued for another 32 minutes. The human ships moved through the Council armada like farmers harvesting wheat. They were systematic and efficient, and utterly without mercy. Commander Hayes destroyed 47 enemy vessels himself. Lieutenant Chen lost count of her confirmed kills. On the Bridge of the Reckoning, Admiral Cole watched the battle unfold with cold satisfaction. Part of him felt sick at the scale of the destruction. These were living beings dying out there, thousands of them every minute. But then he remembered Lily Morrison's face. He remembered her crying for her father. He remembered the way the aliens had watched her die, without a trace of shame. "Continue firing," he said. The Council flagship was the last major vessel to fall. Fleetmaster Vorix stood on his burning bridge, watching his armada die around him. He had led 3,000 ships into battle. 17 remained. "What are you?" he whispered at the black ships that surrounded him. Admiral Cole's face appeared on his screen one final time. "We are humanity. We are the species you dismissed as primitive. We are the people whose child you murdered. Please," Vorix said. It was the first time in his life he had begged for anything. "Show mercy." Cole's expression did not change. "Did you show mercy to a 7-year-old girl?" The reckoning fired. The Council flagship collapsed in on itself, crushing everyone aboard into atoms. The battle was over. It had lasted 47 minutes. 3,000 Council ships had been reduced to 17 survivors. Over 2 million alien soldiers were dead. The human fleet had not suffered a single casualty. Admiral Cole opened a channel to the remaining Council vessels. "You will be allowed to leave. Go back to your worlds. Tell your leaders what happened here. Tell them that the humans are coming. Tell them to pray." The survivors jumped to hyperspace the moment the blocking field was lowered. They scattered across the galaxy, carrying word of the disaster to every corner of known space. Cole turned to his communication officer. "Open a channel to Valanthos Prime. Put me through to High Arbiter Zethrak." The alien leader's face appeared on the screen. He looked older somehow, his gray skin pale and his dark eyes wide with fear. "You saw what we did to your fleet," Cole said calmly. "That was 3,000 ships against 12. Imagine what we will do to your homeworld." Zethrak opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. "We are coming," Cole continued. "We will be there in 6 days. Use that time wisely. Decide whether your species will survive or join your fleet in extinction." Access. Access. The channel closed. In the silence of the bridge, Lieutenant Chen approached Admiral Cole. "What happens when we get there? Do we destroy them?" Cole was quiet for a long moment. He thought about Lily Morrison. He thought about her father holding her body in the public square. He thought about the rage that had driven humanity to this point. "No," he said finally. "We don't destroy them. We make them understand. We make them change. We make sure this never happens again." He looked out at the debris field where 3,000 ships had died. "But first, we make them afraid." The ancient fleet turned toward Valanthos Prime. Behind them, the wreckage of the Council Armada drifted in the void like a warning written in fire. Humanity was no longer weak. Humanity was no longer primitive. Humanity had remembered what it could become when it had something worth fighting for, and the galaxy would never forget. The 6 days of waiting were the longest in the history of Valanthos Prime. The citizens of the capital world watched the skies with terror in their hearts. They had seen the battle footage. They had heard the reports from the 17 survivors. They knew what was coming. High Arbiter Zethrak spent those days in isolation, refusing to see anyone. The being who had ruled the galaxy with cold confidence was now a hollow shell, haunted by the memory of a little girl picking a flower. He had thought that execution would send a message of strength. Instead, it had awakened a nightmare. Counselor Mithara, an elder of the peaceful Silurian species, tried to organize a resistance. She contacted every military force still available to the Council. The response was the same everywhere. No one would fight. No one would sacrifice their ships against an enemy that could destroy 3,000 vessels without taking a single casualty. The galaxy had lost its courage. On the 6th day, the human fleet arrived. The 12 ancient ships emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation above Valanthos Prime. Their black hulls blocked out the stars. Their presence alone disrupted communications across the entire planet. Millions of aliens looked up at the sky and saw their own death hanging in the void. Admiral Cole surveyed the world below. It was beautiful in its way, with purple oceans and golden forests and cities that sparkled like jewels. 8 billion beings lived on this planet. 8 billion lives that he could end with a single command. "We have total orbital superiority," reported Lieutenant Chen. "Their planetary defenses are offline. They are completely helpless." Cole nodded slowly. He had spent the journey here thinking about what he would do when this moment came. The rage was still there, burning in his chest. Part of him wanted to watch this world burn. Part of him wanted to give them exactly what they had given Lily Morrison. But that was not why they had come. "Open a channel to the planetary government," he ordered. "Tell them we want to talk." The negotiation took 3 days. Admiral Cole met with the Council leadership in a conference room on the surface, surrounded by human soldiers armed with weapons that could level cities. High Arbiter Zethrak sat across the table from him, looking like a creature already dead. Cole presented his demands. Unconditional surrender of the Galactic Council. Arrest and trial of all officials involved in Lily Morrison's execution. Immediate dissolution of all laws that designated species as lesser or greater. Complete reform of the Council Charter to protect all sentient beings equally. Zethrak listened in silence. When Cole finished, the High Arbiter looked up with empty eyes. "You have won," he said. "You could destroy us." Cole was quiet for a long moment. He thought about Jack Morrison, who was waiting on the reckoning, who had lost everything, who had every right to demand vengeance. "Because revenge is not enough," Cole said finally. "If we destroy you, another species will rise to take your place. Another council will form. Another child will die because she was born to the wrong people." He leaned forward. "We did not come here to conquer. We came here to change the rules. We came here to make sure that no one ever again looks at a human child and sees something disposable. We came here to build a galaxy where Lily Morrison's death was the last of its kind. Zethrak stared at him. You show mercy to those who showed none to your people. No, Cole replied. We show wisdom. We show strength. We show you what humanity truly is. We protect our own, but we do not become monsters to do it. That is what separates us from you. The terms were accepted. Zethrak was arrested along with every official who had voted for Lily's execution. They were tried before a joint tribunal of human and alien judges. The evidence was overwhelming. The sentence was life imprisonment on a barren moon at the edge of known space. Jack Morrison sat in the gallery during the trial. He watched the being who had ordered his daughter's death receive judgment. He felt no satisfaction, no relief. The hole in his heart remained exactly the same size, but when the sentence was read, he closed his eyes and whispered to his daughter, "They will remember you, sweetheart, forever." President Daniel Webb addressed the galaxy from the steps of the new council building on Volanthos Prime. Behind him stood representatives of every species, including Elder Thalrix of the Silurian, who had helped draft the new charter. Today, we begin a new era, Webb said. An era where strength is not measured by cruelty, where power is not defined by the ability to hurt those weaker than ourselves, where every child, of every species, is precious and protected. He paused, looking out at the cameras broadcasting his words to 1 trillion beings across the stars. We humans are not conquerors. We are not overlords. We are your equals, nothing more and nothing less. But we have learned something important about ourselves. We have learned what we are capable of when we have something worth fighting for. His voice hardened. So hear this warning. If any species, anywhere in this galaxy, harms an innocent human again, we will come. If any government, any council, any leader decides that human lives do not matter, we will remind them how wrong they are. He gestured toward the sky, where the ancient fleet still orbited in silent watch. Those ships will return to Earth. They will sleep again beneath the ice. But they will be listening. They will be waiting. And if humanity ever calls them again, they will answer. The broadcast ended. Across the galaxy, species that had dismissed humans as primitives began to reconsider. Species that had thought themselves superior began to feel afraid. And species that had always treated others with kindness felt hope for the first time in generations. A memorial was built in Geneva, on a hill overlooking the city where humanity had first learned to work together. It was a statue of a little girl, holding a flower. Her face turned toward the stars with innocent wonder. The inscription at its base was simple. For Lily Morrison. She taught us what we would fight for. Jack Morrison visited the memorial every year on the anniversary of his daughter's death. He never remarried. He never had other children. The wound never healed. But standing before his daughter's statue, watching parents bring their children to lay flowers at her feet, he felt something beyond grief. He felt pride. His little girl had changed the universe. His little girl had made the stars safer for every human child who would ever be born. His little girl had woken giants and moved mountains and rewritten the laws of the galaxy. She had been 7 years old. She had picked a flower because she thought it was beautiful. And because of her, the galaxy would never be the same. Far away, beneath the Antarctic ice, 11 ancient ships settled back into their long sleep. Their weapons went quiet. Their engines cooled. Their strange symbols stopped moving. But deep within their hulls, something remained awake. Something was always watching. Something was always listening. Humanity had earned the right to carry their legacy. Humanity had proven themselves worthy of the gift left behind by beings who had mastered the universe 50,000 years ago. And if the galaxy ever forgot the lesson of Lily Morrison, if any species ever dared to harm a human child again, the ships would rise once more. They would always rise, because some things are worth fighting for. Some things are worth any price. And for humanity, every child was one of those things. The end.